Hello and good afternoon.
And welcome to Together Unlocked. Everything is running a little bit slow in this heat. If you're joining us, we're very pleased to see you. Make sure you've got plenty of water or other cold drinks with you. It's a very hot day, and as we might go on to discuss shortly, it is possible to get heat wave, heat stroke without even going out of the house. In the meantime, I'm Ju Gosling, also known as the artist Ju90. I'm the artistic director of Together 2012, who are bringing you this live stream today as part of our Join In From Home programme. With me in my studio in East London is the artist Julie Newman, the chair of Together 2012. We'll come back in a minute for a bit of audio description. But as it's Friday, we're dressed up to go out to stay in. And for once, we're all dressed up to do the same thing, which is to sing some sea shanties. We're going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. But first of all, we'll go over to the other end of our very long virtual sofa to the West Midlands for some introductions and some audio description.
So my name is Josh Surgener. I'm one of the hosts of Together TV, and I am a PhD research student the rest of the time. And in keeping with the theme, it actually worked out quite well. I was already wearing a t-shirt with surfboards on it to go with our kind of beach, sea, surf theme. So as such, I've attempted to kind of stylize my hair in a kind of swept back surfer style.
I think it's called towhead.
It hasn't gone too successfully because I don't have curly hair and it isn't full of sea salt, which I think helps in styling. But I'm doing my best to try and look cool.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, yeah.
Failing, but trying hard.
So, good afternoon. I'm Robin Surgener, co-host of Together Unlocked and business director at Together 2012. Crikey, also known as Angry Fish, which is all very ironic, you see, for today. So, in describing myself today, I am ever so slightly been up all night, perhaps doing a water-based activity. So I haven't shaved, wearing my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. I am wearing a black polo shirt with Angry Fish on the label. And actually, because I am going out to stay in to go fishing, I am actually wearing a blue baseball style hat, which says the South Cerney National Angling Festival on it. So it's staying with that whole fisherman theme. And the South Cerney National Angling Festival is an annual festival of fishing for disabled people.
Oh no, that does sound interesting. And always on a Friday, we have something for the weekend coming to you after 3:30 with lots of recommendations for things you can do from home. If you're watching this in years to come as an archive, it is melting across the UK and particularly in London. If we can't get our words out or we keep having delays on the computer, please bear with us. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as Ju90. I've got a sort of turquoise blue t shirt on. It says Wave Zone Surf Tour, and I believe somewhere along the line 1987. With that over my Henna Corona crop, I have a sort of turquoisey green patterned bandana. I've got black plastic glasses, black wrist braces, and silver jewellery. We're sitting in front of the Together graffiti banner, which has pictures all over it of all the different arts activities we do through the year, from photography, film, drama, art, carnival, street art, and lots more, which we will tell you about over the course of the programme. And we also have our teddy bear Anna,
yes,
taking part in the worldwide virtual bear hunt. And this week she has won the Clockwork Paralympics against Birmingham and is wearing her gold plastic medal. Julie, what do you look like?
Lovely, as always. Today I'm wearing a navy blue polo shirt with little anchors on it. I'm wearing a sort of navy purpley lilac-y headscarf with, I don't know, has it got anything on it?
It might have done once. It's one of my more faded bandanas.
It is indeed a bit faded like
It's
me.
got history on it.
It's got history. That's it. I've got dark rimmed glasses which keep steaming up. So every so often I'm going to have to keep taking them off because I can't really see. They literally are steaming up with the heat from the day, which is phenomenal. It's over 30.
But goodness forbid that we would have anything as environmental
I mean, and
air
actually,
conditioning.
for someone who has been out a few times and is a glasses wearer, there is a certain skill to wearing a face mask and not steaming up your glasses.
Well, that's right. And I think, all of us officially, and I stress officially, ended shielding last week. So I've already had a lot of experience with face masks because I can't go to the bins or take in deliveries and still socially distance because I'm so close to the street. And yeah, I think masks are particularly problematic in this weather. What the authorities were advising today, and particularly over the weekend, is to think about having cotton based face coverings. The surgical type paper masks aren't really any more effective than a triple layer piece of cotton, and that can be a lot easier to breathe through. It can also collect the sweat, as it were. The other advice I saw about the heat wave, apart from the usual take plenty of water with you, don't stand around in the sun, is to make sure you've got spare face coverings, because nothing's worse than them getting all sweaty and having to get something else and just keep wearing it or choose not to. I would also recommend the old Ziploc bag. Keep, one for your clean masks, one for your dirty masks, and then you can recycle them, because I simply quarantine my masks for 2 weeks and then recycle them again unless they've got really grubby. There's such a sort of mountain of waste. We've always, as an organisation, had a very strong environmental streak to us. In fact,
We got a prize.
Yes, we've
We
been
got a
Newlands
prize.
Green Business
Yes,
of the Year
indeed.
on one occasion. We're very fortunate to be funded by Arts Council England as well as the National Lottery Community Fund. And as part of that, we work with an organisation called Julie's Bicycle, and Julie's Bicycle helps us to be as green as possible.
Nothing to do with me.
Yes, but nothing to do with Julie. We could set up our own and call it Julie's Wheelchair, but I think we're probably a little bit too busy. So before we talk more about our summer arts programme, we did just want to say, a couple of health messages, and particularly around the heat wave. Some of you will have seen the footage of Julie's assistant's dog, who does nature reports for us every Wednesday. And her brother, my assistant's dog, Jazz, collapsed and nearly died of cumulative heat stroke 2 years ago at 10:30 at night indoors. And I had no idea that both humans and animals can get heat stroke even if you never go out in the sun, because it's just about your body getting hotter than the heat can escape. So if it is particularly hot, you do need to make sure you do very little indeed. You drink lots and lots of water. If you've got a fan, put it on. Keep the house cool in the daytime by closing the curtains and windows, and do like the Europeans and open them at night to get lots of lovely, fresh, cooler air in, and then shut yourself up again. Has anybody got anything to add? I mean, the surgeons are sports coaches, so
Yeah, absolutely.
We asked, but so you talked about kind of avoiding kind of excess exercise or kind of hard exercise in these conditions, just because if you're not used to it, you can get quite warm. But my PhD is all about thermoregulation and body temperature. So it's just kind of, I know Julie wanted to mention kind of the symptoms quickly of kind of heat stroke and heat exhaustion. So heat exhaustion is the less severe one. So that's when you sweat a lot, you kind of pale, clammy skin, weak pulse. That one, try and cool yourself down, go somewhere nice and cool in the dark, have a lie down, get some fluids on. Heat stroke is the more severe one, and it's actually, the symptoms are a little bit confusing because you get quite red, but actually you stop sweating, you have quite dry skin, your pulse goes quite fast and really strong, and that's the one that kind of, if you have those symptoms, then you need to kind of call for some assistance, because that can be quite dangerous. So yeah, if you suddenly find yourself you've stopped sweating all of a sudden, that's not a good thing. That's something to watch out for, even though it sounds a little bit strange that when you stop sweating you're too hot. But,
Yeah, it doesn't sound strange in a way, but that's because we completely failed to recognise the dog symptoms. And in fact, we've recorded a video with the help of the vet that we're going to create later. But he was running round and round, and you think that's being fit. You know, you think of heat stroke as people just sort of fade and sit down, but in fact, they run around to try and get rid of the heat. I know your PhD looks at how disabled people's bodies might be differently affected. Are there any groups of disabled people who should be particularly careful?
Yeah, well, my research is fairly early, but what we know already is that people with spinal cord injuries are very susceptible to excess heat, because they, you don't sweat below kind of your injury and kind of all the issues with circulation, that their kind of body temperature can shoot up quite quickly, because they can't lose that heat. What I'm looking at is that we believe that people with things like cerebral palsy and kind of neurological issues might be affected a little bit more, in that because their movement is a little bit harder, with kind of spasticity and things, you have to kind of put more effort to get your body to do what you want it to do. Your muscles make a little bit more heat, so that might be one. And then amputees as well, for a similar thing of, the way the body tries to cool down is that it tries to get all the heat away from your core into your kind of hands and feet, and that's why all the veins in your hands stick up when you're really hot. So the theory is, if you're missing a leg, then that heat can't go there, so it's got to go somewhere else, so it might stay in your core a little bit more. We're kind of finding that out. That's what I'm hopefully going to contribute to knowledge.
Yeah.
But we think that's what it is. So if you are in one of those groups, then kind of be more aware, but hope people kind of understand their own bodies.
Just adding to that is that, and I know from being around sports camps, as a competitor, or many years ago, but in hot places, people who got like athetosis, people who don't stop moving, and that can be MS as well. That the body is then still doing all that movement, so producing heat in itself.
You make heat when you move. So yeah, if you do have kind of spasms and things like that normally, then it's just going to be more heat that you've got to try and lose. And if you don't normally have spasms and you start getting them because you're really hot, definitely phone 999, because that's
Absolutely. I know from talking to the vet as well that if you get overheated, one of the first aid things is tepid water, but not freezing cold, because the body goes into some kind of shock. Is that right?
Yes. So if you've got a spray bottle at home, it's really good because it'll kind of mist it. But just a damp flannel works. But yeah, have just kind of room temperature, when you just turn the tap on, will actually draw more heat out to evaporate. If you put kind of ice water on it, exactly, the body kind of panics almost. It kind of shrinks away from it. So rather than you kind of dissipating that heat or losing that heat through it, it kind of runs away, but then just goes back into you
because it thinks you're cold.
Yeah, because it all of a sudden is like, oh, that's cold. I need to kind of keep all of my heat, which obviously is kind of the opposite of what you want. So yeah, if you just get kind of room temperature water, and yeah, if you have got a spray bottle, if anyone's got any empty antibac bottles or whatever that they can rinse out.
That's a good idea.
That'll work really well, because that fine mist just kind of on your arms and legs will really help.
Wash it out with boiling water and plenty of detergent first. But yes, that's one of the things we do for the dogs and the humans. I've got misting bottles around, and mist the dogs and occasionally ourselves, whether Julie likes it.
Yeah, kind of damp towel around the neck as well. Kind of back of the neck is a really really good way. And then again, yeah, make it kind of room temperature rather than cold.
And one way you can bring the temperature down just a degree or two is to have something like a washing up bowl of water in front of your fan, or even a wet towel spread out in front of your fan, and the fan just picks up the moisture and it helps to cool the air. Well, thanks for that, Josh. I hope everybody found it informative, whether you're raring to get on with art or not. I found out things I never wanted to know about heat stroke 2 years ago. I am so grateful to our vet, Animal Arc. But, I wouldn't like to see anybody else go through the same thing, let alone a human being. And I think because it's not talked about, we don't always realise that if we've got specific medical conditions, it can make us a bit more susceptible. So we're well into August, as we can tell. It's always in Britain going to be boiling hot, or more likely cold and freezing in August. But Together 2012 always runs a Summer Together programme, and that draws on our roots when we were a one-off for 2012 only, a volunteer-led project to celebrate the Paralympics in Newham, which is our home and the main host borough for London 2012. So we've continued that tradition of having a sort of artistic programme in the summer, as well as our main artistic festival, which is in Disability History Month, which is November, December. And the Summer Together programme really focuses on additional opportunities to engage in creative activities for disabled people and whoever they want to bring with them. So we run a year-round clubs programme, and I'll put a video on to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But essentially, everything is free, everything is open access. And what we do over the summer holiday is take advantage of the fact that there's more access to buildings because lots of groups are closed. And we have additional programmes, mostly focused the last couple of years around carnival arts. But which year was it, Julie, we were doing canals?
2017.
Yes, so in 2017, we were commissioned by the Canal and River Trust to manage Britain's waterways, to run a project engaging with the waterways to commemorate the reopening of Carpenter's Road Lock, which is now in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. And I certainly hadn't realised the links between the river and the docks in Newham, and the fact that the canals were then used to take goods from the docks all over the country. Julie led on the project, and do you want to talk a little bit about it, and then we'll put your film on and you can carry on talking over that?
Sure, yeah, that'd be fine. It was interesting. It was actually longer than 2 weeks. As Ju said, it was a summer program, and it included every aspect of the club's schedule. So we did poetry linked to canal art. We did fine art. We did some textile work and painting spoons and jars and all sorts. And there was a song which we found on the YouTube channel called Roses and Castles by a guy called Jeff Summerfield, which I don't think is traditional, but it's a lovely song, and I think it shows the spirit of the canal. I think one of the things about canal boats is the speed at which they don't travel. They travel very, very slowly. They go at about 4 miles per hour maximum, and that's both their attraction and their downfall.
Yeah, I'd forgotten how comprehensive the programme was. You're
It
absolutely
was.
right. Because, so for example, our drawing and painting sessions of our art club, which would usually take place on a Friday morning, we had one trip to the side of the River Lee, which runs from the Olympic Park through the lock to the Thames, and spent a lovely morning painting there. And I think, was that Cody Dock? And then we had
Yeah.
another morning painting and taking photographs at the lock in the Olympic Park. We had a visit to the canal and the Canal Museum over in Camden, didn't we?
We did. I thought that was lovely. It's set on the site of an old ice cream ice cellar in King's Cross, just off King's Cross, and it's at the bottom of I think it was the Caledonian Canal. not the Caledonian, that's in Scotland, but Caledonian Street, it sort of like comes up to that. And there's loads and loads
Regent's
of
Canal.
Regent's Canal. Thank you very much. Loads and loads of boats were tethered. They were docked up behind the museum itself, so you could actually go out behind the museum and look at the boats that were there and watch them come and go. And we had a nice time watching one setting off, obviously on some sort of journey, but it was really nice to watch it just slowly moving away up
I'm
the
going to
water.
say that I mean, the canal history, canal culture, canal art is massive in the Midlands. I'm not just to kind of reiterate on what you're
Yeah,
saying and come back to you, but
And
you know, there are still working barges in the Midlands, and they have kind of massive canal festivals. And there's a place called Netherton, which is kind of in the deepest Black Country, as it were, where there's actually a whole almost their own language that's spoke amongst people from that area based around the canals. Fascinating stuff.
yeah, I mean, we have a big modern canal community around Newham, around the River Lee and the canals connecting to it. But of course, it's mostly artists and professionals. It's not people anymore working on the river. I mean, again, I didn't realise it's these links, isn't it, between you in the kind of East London district of Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
of course, it was, you know, things came into the Royal Docks in Newham, went through the canals to the Midlands. And the reason the
and down from
yeah,
the
and of
Midlands,
course
actually.
the Canal Museum being built on the site of an ice cream cellar. The reason it was next to the river was by sort of tunneling down below the canal level, it was already very cold. And what they used to do is the ice would literally come from the Arctic off the ships onto the canal, up to Regent's Park, into the ice store, and then they could make the ice cream. So
Wow.
it's an incredible journey. But to focus back on our craft-based and painting activities of our art club, what Julie was able to do was lead on a couple of activities which were just using traditional techniques to decorate things you would already have at home, as in glass jars and wooden spoons. And we thought you might like to see more of the work, so I'm going to put the video on and join in from home. We would love to see your photos if you do it and enjoy it. But everybody absolutely loved it in East London. So let me just see if this will cooperate in the heat.
Now this is outside of the Canal Boat Museum. These are some of the wares that were created using the techniques on. This is again throughout the little slideshow. What you'll see is people coating plain glass jars. We got a whole box full of wooden spoons, and we use those to try and replicate some of the roses and castles that we were looking at as part of the social history of the canal art. The spoons themselves were actually very easy to I was just trying to think. I just interrupted myself because I just remembered. I think we talked about them at the very beginning of the Together Unlocked series. Decorating a wooden spoon is actually quite straightforward. Where these guys moved on was that they actually were making images. A lot of them. Some were using just patterns, and some of the patterns I thought worked very, very well. But you can see there's images coming on there. And again, it's replicating the art from the canal boats. In the 1750s, thereabouts, was the beginning of the canal ventures to carry coal from Woolley to Manchester. And the first canal was made there. The first working canal was designed by a man called James Brindley. And he was more or less a self-taught engineer, and he created a system of canals using a bridge and a viaduct and tunnels and all sorts of things, and he extended it right up until when he died in sort of 1779. He was still working, designing and constructing these canals. As Robin says, the Midlands is very well served with canals, and that was very much part of the structure of moving goods from one place to another rapidly. During the 1700s and the 1800s, the roads weren't tarmacked; they were all muddy. When it rained, it was virtually impossible to go across them because they just were so heavily used that they got soaked up with mud. So the amount of goods that were transported were minimal. So effectively, what the canal system did was provided an alternative to horse-drawn carriages, and they could carry a canal boat could carry over 30 tons worth of goods, predominantly in the early days, coal and iron. Effectively, what happened then? Sorry, Jude's just moving. What happened then was the railways thought, aha, this is a very good thing. We can do it even better and quicker. And so they did. They started to create railway lines, very often following the lines of the canals, because predominantly the canals were the straightest and the easiest way and fastest way through the landscape. And so the companies that had been running the canal boats to transport goods cut back. They started to feel the pinch quite heavily, and families came on board the canal boats. As the families, including the children, started to crew the boats, obviously they wanted to make the boats themselves look more homely and become more family friendly. And this is thought where the canal art actually started. It's recorded really as sort of starting in the 1850s, the mid 1800s, and it continued that way. Nobody really knows where it comes from. There's talk about the designs coming from Europe. There's talk about a crossover with Romany art, but that's very strongly contested. The bottom line of it is that it's thought that the flowers, the roses, were equivalent of having a garden, and the castles were the equivalent of saying, this is my castle, this is my home, this is where I live. And very often, as the boats transversed across the various canals, they used to get laughed at and ridiculed from the bank by posh people who had homes to live in that were on the ground. So they wanted to sort of fight back, and they wanted to create their own identity, their own culture, and their own art, and that's what they did. So the Roses and Castles is traditional. If you talk about roses and castles, you always come back to canal art. And some of the household items that they decorated actually have become very, very collectible. Things like watering cans, teapots. There's a nice castle. As you can see, somebody's taken it very, very literally and created a castle on a wooden spoon.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that people were using it as a reference, weren't they? They weren't trying to sort of appropriate culture or trying to mimic it. And when we were looking at the jars, I think that was partly as a sort of glass is a lot cheaper than enamel, but it did prove quite tricky to paint on, even though we were using specialist glass paint.
And that end one is just a picture of mine. We did a lot of paintings around the canals and canal art. Also, I found some films as well. If you do a good old search, there's all sorts around there, which I think are really interesting. So we actually had films as well during the Monday sessions.
Yes, and it also allowed us to come back to our sea shanty program, because we had hoped to discover that there was an entire musical tradition around the canals, and there is, but it's very, very modern. It doesn't seem to date back to the time when people were actually working the canals. As a music club, we have a music club which is a sort of live open mic night, usually on the first Friday of each month. At the moment, we're Zooming together. We did last night on the first Thursday instead. But within that, we first started in South Canning Town, which is very close to the River Lee and the Thames. And we had a grant that was really specific to the culture of that area. And just down the road, over 900 iron ships were built. And of course, we have the docks, and no doubt people have been sailing up the Thames for a very long time. In fact, I've got a great, great, great grandfather who was a sailor in Stepney, and his son went to Greenwich to the Naval Academy. So, yeah, I think a lot of people have got roots in the sea. So, we first started singing shanties, particularly Drunken Sailor. And then later on, we've been lucky to work with two groups of shanty artists, haven't we? We had a sort of day's workshop with two artists from Cecil Sharp House, the headquarters of the English Folk Dance and Song Society. And we more recently, for this canal project, we worked with the Rom Shanty crew from Romford, and we performed at the opening of the lock, didn't we, at the Carpenter's Road lock as part of that project. And we were also able to demonstrate all of the spoons and different art that had been created. And now most of those spoons have been set by one of our volunteers, Cliff Seagree, into a fantastic wooden frame,
Yeah,
which is now
beautiful.
hanging in the community cafe at St Bart's Centre, where we usually run our clubs programme, but of course is closed. So I wanted to tell you a bit more now about the clubs programme and how we've translated that into something that you can join in with from home without really anything else other than what you would usually have at home. So let's see if this video will behave. Together
Together
2012
2012 is running a join in from home
programme from our website, together2012.org.uk. Click on the link at the top of the page, Join In From Home, to go straight to the main page where you have a wide range of accessible, inclusive creative activities, mostly using things that you would already have at home. At the top of the page and throughout the pages, you will also see videos in British Sign Language to translate the site for deaf people. These videos can also be useful if you have difficulties reading and you simply want to hear more of the content. The Join In From Home programme is based on the activities that we would usually be running in East London. So, for example, we have an arts club which usually operates on a Tuesday with craft-based activities and on a Friday morning for drawing and painting. Here you can join in with the arts club's Hands project and celebrate your uniqueness and membership of the human race. There are full instructions on the linked page here. But essentially, we invite you to draw around your hand on a piece of card. It could be an old cereal packet. Cut the shape out, turn it over, and decorate it with anything you would like to do. It could be paints, crayons, glitter, collage, beads, leaves, anything you can think of. Photograph your hand or hands and send it to us at tv@together2012.org.uk. We'll add it to our video installation and share it on social media. Our music club usually meets on the first Friday of each month. We have an open mic session and we invite everybody to play along with percussion instruments. So here you can learn how to make your own percussion instruments from recycled materials. And you can also join in a percussion workshop from last summer in terms of carnival percussion. So these three instruments are used most often in carnival. We have a shaker and a go-go and a hand drum. So this is how to make a recycled shaker, a recycled go-go, and a recycled hand drum. You can also, if you're technically minded, make your own tactile sound instrument. This does require a few simple electronics, but is a very interesting and exciting project as part of our Vibrafusion ongoing work. You can also listen with Together. We have Spotify playlists created by Robin Surgener, also known as our TV presenter Angry Fish, and we also have 2 classical music playlists from Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, including one that's uniquely suited to people who are feeling very unwell. I hope that made sense in this heat. I've got 2 lots of artwork that people have sent in who have usually participating in our clubs. So let's see if that can come up on the screen as well.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it lovely? For anyone who can't see it, it's a beautifully knitted and quite unusually designed, because it's like a cape stroke baby's jacket.
I think it's crocheted, she was saying.
Crochet, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's my ignorance and also my rather dodgy eyesight. Pamela's been making knitted things for babies throughout lockdown and now beyond, particularly for families who are really struggling but are having new babies and young children over lockdown. So I think that's also a lovely and very generous thing to do. Pamela was saying that lockdown hasn't made her feel like she wants to design something from scratch, but she's doing these very, very original interpretations of other people's designs. And I'm going to have to get the computer to cooperate. It always seems to do longer in the heat, which I'm not surprised because so do I. But this is from Lee Brooker. And it's a drawing of a Volkswagen with Lee written over the top and a photo which he's very carefully sized and printed, like a sort of passport size photograph that he's put in the window to show that he's driving it. Lee is an enthusiastic member of both art club sessions, and he's also a very experienced machinist. So I just love the way that he's got the photo in. What does other people think?
I think it looks great. I mean, I'm actually pretty impressed with the freehand drawing of the VW as well.
Yes, it's not. Is it? It's a red beetle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very specific beetle, and I recognise that because we used to have beetles, and they have subtle differences. And yes, so I won't get too geeky about that, but thank you, Lee. That is great. Please do send us in your drawings, your paintings, your poems, your videos, anything else you're doing. It doesn't have to be one of the activities listed on the Join In From Home programme, but if you've got ideas for new inclusive activities based on recycled materials and things you might already have at home, then please do let us know. And now I think it's time for something for the weekend.
Now, hoping. Oh, you're back.
We are.
We are.
So you froze for a second. We were going to come in and be all full of excitement. Then. Josh was going to add something.
Yes, freezing would
Freezing would be lovely for a minute.
I think we're actually matching.
Josh was going to add something about canals, just very briefly.
Yeah, just before we move on to things for the weekend, talking about kind of the history of kind of canal boats and canal art in the West Midlands. Many years ago, when I did my Duke of Edinburgh award, which for those of you that don't know what it is, you typically do when you're at school, and it involves some volunteering, but there's an exhibition part of it. So most people will go to kind of Wales or somewhere in the Peak District and walk around for a few days. Being a wheelchair user, hiking through a field isn't really my cup of tea. So instead, me and a few friends, we rowed it or canoed it around the kind of waterways around the West Midlands. And there was so many boats and kind of designs, and you know, some of the artwork is so intricate and detailed. But one of the ones that we saw, there was a guy kind of touching up the bit on his boat, and it was all freehand, and you know, trying to draw a straight line freehand can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, let alone painting some kind of really intricate swirl on the side of the boat when you're hanging upside down on a canal. And it was incredible. And it was just really kind of interesting to see, to first hand and see all of that over the kind of 3 days that we were out there.
What a nice thing to do, Josh, as well, canoeing.
And
Yeah,
their
it was lovely.
hands must have been so sore, mustn't they, with the amount of physical labour and being out. You know how it is, the cold and the wind, and your fingers get knocked, and they wouldn't have had our expensive hand creams and things when they were sort of inventing this. So, something for the weekend where we suggest things that we're intending to do online or things we might recommend, even if they're not our cup of tea. So, who wants to start?
Shall I
Carry on talking.
quickly? Excuse me. I'm still. I recommended a 24-hour monitor of a coral reef in off of the coast of Miami. I think it was last week. I'm still mesmerized by it. I've seen rays. I've seen angelfishes. I saw the most beautiful parrotfish with amazing little blue beak. And I really, really strongly advise going back to that and checking it out. I've spent hours mesmerized by the fish.
It's very, I think Josh is looking a bit surprised, but what's really unusual is it's got an HD camera that's running 24/7. And I think they can only do that because it is this research project. So, you couldn't do it in real life. You might be able to pay for a terribly expensive snorkeling trip, but it would be a one-off. And the fact that you can and the fish would know you were there, and fish don't know the camera's there. So yes, it is one of those kind of, it's like a virtual fish tank or screensaver, but totally real and rather amazing, and certainly much safer than going to Florida at the moment. What do you recommend over in the West Midlands?
I had a couple of kind of digital museum recommendations. I know we talked a little bit on Wednesday about the opening of the US Olympic and Paralympic Museum. So for anyone that isn't currently in Colorado Springs and can't go in person, they're on their website, they have a section called Spotlight that has kind of stories and bits and pieces and kind of virtual exhibits, and then the kind of whole Hall of Fame is online as well, and with kind of all the people they've inducted so far, and then kind of little bits about kind of their story as Olympians or Paralympians or coaches or whatever they're being inducted for being. And then the other one was it's called Arts and Culture, or Google Arts and Culture. Originally I only thought it was kind of one thing, but on looking at it more, there's 2,000 museums worldwide.
Goodness.
That all of their collections of art and things are all available digitally through Google Arts and Culture. And you can do things like you can search by color, and it just gives you a bar at the top of kind of a palette, and you pick which color, and then it gives you all of the paintings that have that as a primary color. There's kind of 360-degree videos. Sometimes it's a tour through an exhibit. Sometimes it's in a symphony hall with an orchestra playing. Some of them are more digitally things, so you're in the exhibit, but they've got all these kind of CGI displays and someone talking you through it. And yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff on it, and it's just really cool. So yeah, you could, between now and next August, you could probably find things to do on it. So
well, that sounds terrific. Mine's actually a bit more work-based and aimed at not just artists, but aspiring artists. We were saying the other day, so here's a coincidence, that Together 2012 takes a lot of our inspiration from the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where I've been lucky enough to work a few times. And Edinburgh this week would usually have begun the Fringe, taking over a huge range of church halls and school halls and community centres and things, and bringing everything from top class professional comedy and theatre and one person shows by a whole range of stars, right down to school plays and student productions. And everybody comes together, and people are so nice, aren't they? Was it Lionel Blair who we ended up having
Yes,
coffee with at
yes.
one point, who'd brought in a one person show, and he was talking to our dog and showing us pictures of his dog. Everything is very, very friendly. And they coordinate that, obviously, because you've got thousands of productions. And the process would usually start around Christmas, and you would register for the Fringe. And once you registered, whether or not you go ahead and book a production, you've got access to a lot of information, and they run a whole bunch of seminars and things to make it as easy as possible. And then when you get up there, if you're officially part of the Fringe program, you have access to what's effectively a club. I mean, a building called Fringe Central, and then they will offer loads and loads of things to help you develop as an artist or a company. So people don't think of Edinburgh as professional development beyond experience, and it's an incredible experience. But there's also a lot of professional development on offer. And as they say, in the absence of a physical space this year, we'd like to welcome you to the first Fringe Central virtual hub, recreating the welcoming open door environment of Fringe Central in August. It features over 30 free artist focus events beginning this Friday when the Fringe would have opened, and running to Monday, the 31st of August, because the Fringe traditionally always closes on the bank holiday. And you can take part, connect, collaborate with other participants, or chat to a member of the Fringe Society team in real time. So I think this is of interest to anybody who hasn't been to the Fringe as a professional but wants to take a production. And by a professional, I do include the schools and community groups and universities. I suppose I really mean as a performer. If you're a performer or a producer, you want to go up there. If you've already been to the Fringe, maybe your show was due to go this year, and you want the latest about how they're planning to do things next year, what socially distanced Fringe might look like, impacts it's going to have, I think it's well worth a visit. But I also think if you've got no interest or indeed funding to get to Edinburgh at all, you don't have to, anybody can register. So to me, it's that perfect opportunity to get a foot in the door of the club without having to pay a penny or to commit to anything, and just finding out all that information about how you too could take a one-person show or a production next year or in the future. I have a feeling that one-person shows are going to be even more popular than they usually are for obvious reasons.
Well, I think that describes what happened whenever I did my show. There was only one person watching it. No, I do know that's not
The
what
sound
you mean.
engineer.
Yeah, shut up, you. So anyway, so just a couple of things from me. Well, actually, the first one is from Emily, one of our junior presenter people.
One of the great ones.
And actually, it's kind of interesting thinking about like the canal art and how they represent things in it, and using spoons and buckets and all kinds of things to put pictures on. Emily's idea is that if you're finding something to do, is to get a household object, draw it, but then kind of the posh word is anthropomorphize it, but characterize it. Think of, get the oven and then think, oh, that's a hot person. Are they angry, or are they in the heat? Or, just draw up. So draw something in your house, but then make it give it.
One of the other examples that she did was the calendar. Would be, that kind of, if you think of like what an English teacher or an English professor would look like, kind of buttoned up, kind of, vest and tweed elbow patches or something like that. I just thought it was a really cool kind of idea and art challenge to kind of.
I think we have another artist in the house in the making.
I don't know why you're surprised about that.
Right. And then just one more very quick one.
Well, could you
Um,
just come in on that? We are going to have 1 or 2 programs at the end of the month that are produced entirely by young people, and
Yeah.
I would strongly recommend, but for all of us, I would strongly recommend that you do a sort of longer piece about that with some examples and sort of further explanations. And yeah, it just sounds absolutely
Brilliant.
fascinating.
We've already got some wonderful art that I'm planning to
Terrific.
get her to talk about.
all right. Okay, sorry. And then just one other. I was thinking, what could I do differently this weekend? And I thought, do you know what? We keep talking about, how we work together, what we can do. And I thought, as families or, and this does entail generally more than one person. But actually invent a board game. And I thought, well, okay. And I remember doing what Tracy and I did 1 years ago called Barriers and Ramps, which is a bit like Snakes and Ladders, but was for equality training. And I thought, well, do you know what? How would you do it? If you came up with a great idea, blah, blah, blah. So I literally went online and typed in how to make a board game. And there is a website called bigpotato.com blog, how to make a board game, with kind of like 5 essential steps that any person thinking about making a board game should, and then a myriad of expansions into it. But actually, it's really, really cool. And why not? I mean, and it could be a disaster. It could be something you only ever play at home, or you could become the next Trivial Pursuits inventor.
Well, that's a sort of added bonus, isn't it? It sounds absolutely fascinating. I remember about 25 years ago, this is because I'm 58, making a board game, and I can't even remember what for or what it was about, and it hasn't occurred to me since. We have a highlights and links page on our website under the main Together TV Unlocked menu. On that, we will put links to everything we've talked about today and any images that we've shown. We do that every single day. You can always go straight to that page and find the links, and the page is usually there by about 6 o'clock. Twisting things and making up our own words is something we do quite a lot. On a Friday
I just wanted just as a final thing for the weekend, neither Josh nor I have indulged in talking about Formula One at Silverstone. And it's the 70th birthday, the 70th anniversary of Formula One at Silverstone. So Channel 4, free to view, there, the whole thing.
What can I say apart from I can't even characterize that as being a dad's thing because me and Robin won't be watching. So now you can tell me, as somebody with no short-term memory, what I was about to say.
Twisting. You were twisting.
Twisting words. So yes, one of the traditions in sea shanties, and one of the reasons we like it so much, is they are songs that anybody can sing. They're also known as chanties, and that's because you can chant them or shout them. And they're working songs, and it's all about the rhythm and all about the work. What I was going to say, I think, is that on a Friday, we always have a bit of music at the end, very often Robin playing us out. Last week, we had Robin's version of I Will Survive called We Will Survive. You can find the lyrics on the website under Together Unlocked Anthems. And last night at Zoom Together, we were discussing, shall we say, the kind of rather adult nature of a lot of shanties, because the lines were each contributed by the sailors who were singing them, and a lot of these songs would have the same rhythm and the same tune, but completely different words. So we are going to try, with you joining in at home, to sing A Nice Cup of Tea, and which is based on A Drop of Nelson's Blood,
which is rum.
Yeah. And was given out to the sailors, wasn't it?
Yep. I can't wait. A little drop of Nelson's rum would be.
Yes, I do my
pleasant.
best, everybody, and particularly funders, because we have an alcohol-free policy, which I'm very committed to. But the older members of our team still make inappropriate comments. What I like,
forgive me, yeah.
Together runs, and everybody who comes to Together activities knows this. We run on ample cups of free tea and coffee. So here we go. Oh, a nice cup of tea wouldn't do us any harm. A nice cup of tea wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a nice cup of tea wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yeah, we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, writing a new poem wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, writing a new poem wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, writing a new poem wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, taking some photos wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, taking some photos wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, taking some photos wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind.
And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yes, we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Hey.
Oh, a phone call with friends wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a phone call with friends wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, a phone call with friends wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, an hour with the crochet wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, an hour with the crochet wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, an hour with the crochet wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yeah, we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yes, we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, playing the guitar wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, playing the guitar wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, playing the guitar wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, painting a new picture wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, painting a new picture wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, painting a new picture wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind.
And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yeah, we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, joining in a Zoom wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, joining in a Zoom wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, joining in a Zoom wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive, keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, to have a little dance wouldn't do us any harm. To have a little dance wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, to have a little dance wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yeah, we'll stay alive, keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, shooting a new film wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, shooting a new film wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, shooting a new film wouldn't do us any harm, and we won't be left behind. And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong, and we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive, keep our spirits strong, and we won't be left behind.
Oh, banging our own drum wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, banging our own drum wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, banging our own drum wouldn't do us any harm. And we won't be left behind.
And we'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. Yeah, we'll stay alive. Keep our spirits strong. We'll stay alive and keep our spirits strong. And we won't be left behind. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you on Monday at 3:00. Until
Bye.
then, stay home, stay creative, and stay well.
Yeah, have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Guys, bye-bye.
I don't understand.